Hello, everyone. An hour in. Sorry, we'll make this quick. But
But that entire thing that you just had of the hold music is going to be in the YouTube, so he's not going to edit that hour out.
unfortunately, that's the truth. I apologize. I think I will have to put like a please push the video to this point in the video, so you don't have to listen to that entire.
You can't just clip that hour out.
I
It
probably
was
could.
it was like an hour and 10 minutes of like just hold music.
I mean, I could. Probably won't. I know me, so probably gonna tank this first episode. I hope not. I'll definitely do my best to make sure to either I'll cut it out or put the clip to come to. I'll have to remember one of those two. But we're here to review another anime, specifically Rurouni Kenshin. Um, this has been something I've been talking to my co-host here about reviewing, and I guess we're here. We're watching one episode. Today, episode one.
Why do
Uh,
they call it Rurouni Kenshin?
well, in the show, he literally says that he's a Rurouni, but I looked that up, and that is not a real Japanese word.
No, it's a made up one that like is like Ronin, right?
Yeah, Ronin. I think that's really what's supposed to be, but they made up a word for it.
Are we supposed to be calling the main character Himura or Kenshin?
His name is Himura Kenshin.
Right, but which one? If you had to say one of the two, which one do you say? Because I would have thought it was Himura, but I
I
mean, it's
believe it's
probably
Kenshin is that the name they call him by throughout the entirety of this uh intellectual property. If I
okay.
remember correctly, I don't think they ever call him Himura. Now there might be some characters that do because they're not gonna be familiar with him. Um, but I think Hiyori will be calling him Kenshin, and a few other characters might. I'm actually surprised that he showed like the main cast already in the freaking intro. One of them characters I completely forgot about, and like I was like, oh, I remember him, but I remember him differently.
Well, I'm
So,
guessing they introduced one or two of the characters in every episode until they got the whole like group out there.
well, I'm confused about which character's gonna come next. I already have the two in my mind, but I don't know the order they come in.
Yeah.
Because one of them is like a prodigy later on in the show. Another one is a rival character. But I don't remember specifics.
That's how they handled Shaman King, though. Every episode they rolled out one or two characters, remember? At the beginning. But they were all in the intro.
I don't think every character was in it. Was it? Sorry, I have a vague memory of that. Also, I guess one more last thing before we move on with Rurouni Kenshin. I know some people are probably wondering it's October and there's no My Hero. I do not know what's going on. Usually, there's no season announced. My best guess is they'll probably announce something in December for next year. Uh, I know from like things I haven't been looking at, but just been title like headlines. Things are happening in the manga for My Hero. Sounds like they're not wrapping up, but they're getting close to that point. Apparently, stuff is going down, is getting crazy. So I don't know when the studio. I don't know what they're working on right now. I suppose they're working on some show that I'm not aware of that I keep my eye on. We'll see. Um, Maybe we'll hear of something coming out in March of next year. My next best bet, because they don't have anything for October. Then we're not going to see anything for the rest of the year, which is sad, but I guess it is what it is. So episode one of this is Kenshin Homura Batosai. Um, we begin the episode with a giant man claiming that he is the Batosai. Wait, no, that's wrong. Wait, no, we begin the episode with freaking like a red haired character who looks pretty young at the time, in the middle of a pile of bodies of people,
Mm-hmm.
which is signifies, I guess, how good of a swordsman he is. Interesting enough, I mean, he seems to like the
It
guy.
doesn't, it doesn't just signify what a good swordsman is. And if you look at this from a historical perspective, this era that they're in, that the anime is in, was right around like the 1860s, 1870s, almost definitely in the 1860s. And he was a. This was a time when there was a lot of like upheaval going on in Japan. Japan was industrializing. It was embracing a lot of Western ways and technology. It was copying Renaissance era things a lot.
So this is the
And
era when this was the changeover was happening.
when the changeover was happening, exactly. And there was also, this is also the era right after, that era created a situation where there was four classes of people that were like known as like the staples for it. And the samurai existed as like, they were the shi, which were gentry scholars. The samurai fell in that class and made up a lot of it. And then there was the Nong, which was the peasant farmers, the Gong, which were artisans and craftsmen, and the Shang, which were merchants and traders. And the Shi was where the scholars were, and the Shi was like being drastically transformed, and it was causing an upheaval for the samurai, who had a lot of really high level positions at that time and a lot of respect. There were special laws made that would allow them to have special rights, including the right to carry a sword in public and things like that. And the time frame that this takes place in was after a lot of the samurai rebelled when these changes were being made, because they were losing a lot of their rights and things like that. And it was a big upheaval. It was also very expensive for Japan, all the changes they were making. And the samurai had started going up against, basically what they were doing is like, instead of like having these wealthy samurai that were like specially trained and like nurtured throughout their whole life, they were just hiring infantry. And the samurai were fighting against the infantry, and having been like elites, do you know what I mean? The samurai were elite soldiers, and a samurai could take out a lot of these like novice and amateur like soldiers that they were up against. But it was so much easier to quote unquote make, you know, a regular rank and file soldier, that the samurai couldn't keep up. And they were using that kind of as like, and at the beginning of this, unless this was a flashback in the way that you're talking about it, um, it would be a reference to like a time after the fall of the samurai, when they weren't allowed to bring their swords in public anymore. Like they'd lost their rights. They were a dying breed. They don't call him a Ronin, which is a samurai without a master, but they use that word for him. That, you know what I mean? Like kind of means the same thing, like a samurai without a master, but kind of a poorer word for it. You know, Rurouni, which is like a wanderer or something like that. So it emphasizes that he is of a lost people. You know what I mean? A broken era when there were
I wanna
people that were. Yeah.
I want to point out that in the beginning, like this is the main character. Like, we just assume this is who he is. This is the main character. I mean, the hair is
Yeah.
the same color, but if you look at his outfit here, he's wearing blue, and I think that is blue or black. I'm not sure which color that is. It's definitely not red. The one that the kimono that he's wearing, or you know what he's wearing currently, I suspect this is like in the past, because it would make sense for it to be in the future. On
It
top
wouldn't.
of, huh?
It wouldn't make sense for it to be in the past. It would make sense for it to be in the future. But it's interesting to note that Hajime Saito was a real person, and he lived from February 18th, 1844 to September 28th, 1915. So, like, if we put him at 25 years old, it would be like 1869. Do you know what I mean? So it would still put him in the 1800s if he was like in his 20s or 30s. Like, so if anything, it would be in the future instead of the past, what was going on there. So you know more about the story than I do, but
Yeah,
for
I was
this
trying to
to
place
be,
him if he didn't have the scar on his face, but he has it here. Dang it. Um, the main
it could,
Kimura, it
it
looks like Kimura's sword is like really whittled, and it's also not. It doesn't look like the way it does now. I have to say this in the past.
but in the main storyline that happens after this little like piece here, he takes his sword out.
And it's
Um,
new, but
and it's new and unoiled and stuff like that. Here, it's completely covered in oil, and he's just fought off like
yeah. But but
30
if you
times.
look at the swords, you can tell there's a drastic difference. On top of that, the girl Kaori says that it's new, almost like it was never used. But that sword here was completely used, and it definitely didn't look the way. If you look at the way the sword is actually designed, it definitely looks like it's not the sword he's using there.
Right. So, if anything, this opening scene is in the future.
Does he look a little younger in that sense than he does look now?
It's hard to tell.
Yeah, it's kind of a problem with him. I really don't know why he looks the way he does. I know they make a joke out of that at the end of the episode. Like, wait a minute, how old are you actually?
The period that they were in was like he was a Shinsegumi in this, right? Or they were Shinsegumis. And Shinsegumis were from 1863 to 1869. So if these people are Shinsegumis, it was in 1863 to 1869. Because they were a small elite group of swordsmen organized by commoners and low-rank samurai, commissioned by the military government during Japan's Bakumatsu period.
I believe this is the period that they didn't even say the period that we're at right now. Hold up, I can just get it to.
He announces himself though as like being a Shitsugumi, like the guy with the
Yeah, I
stars.
know, I get that. I'm just trying to figure out the period. I feel like there it is. Yeah, Bakumatsu era Kyoto.
Right. So that's it. It's 1863 to 1869 is when that scene happens. The scene afterwards would still be in. Let me look it up here. It's in the Meiji era, right?
Yeah, I believe that.
Because they 6 minutes and 36 seconds they announce that they're in the Meiji era, which is a period that extended from October 23rd, 1868 to July 30th, 1912.
Means it happens
So
afterwards, right? Or the current, what anime is currently, not where the anime is currently, that's happening in the future.
the only way it could be, we've got it narrowed down to being 1868 or 1869 that both of these probably took place in. So it's like, it's not enough where his face would look different. She also said, like, there also was an awkward moment, now that you bring it up, where she makes a joke about him and says, "You're over 30? How could you be with your face?" Remember that?
Yeah, I'm aware. I think that's a joke with him in general. It's like no one knows how old he is, and he doesn't say from what I remember. Now that's
But he doesn't say, but it's sort of a hint that maybe he's older than he looks.
I mean, they do that in anime all the dang time. Though I feel like it's just kind of like, but I don't know if he's that old. I would put him in his 30s. That's where I would put him. And to be generous, maybe late 20, early 30s is where I would put him.
Oh wait, here's another thing that would give us a hint about the date. In this, that you're right, that might be in the past, because what happens later, that scene probably happened in the 1860s in the opening scene. The Sword Abolishment Act, which they talk about a lot in this after the opening scene, and that's why she's carrying around a wooden sword and stuff like that. That was passed in 1876. So that would put the opening scene at like 1868-ish, and then the scene where he's walking around with his sword and that's illegal would have to be 1876 or later.
I also want to point out too that I think to point out that everything with him in the current shirt, the red shirt, he at the end of the, I guess we're gonna skip around here. At the end of the near the end of the show episode, when he's like having his fight with the fake Batosai, he brings up how, because like a lot of people bring up the Hajime's I think it's Hajime, that fake Batosai. He brings up like how swords and everything are used to kill people, and the way Hamura talks sounds like he's killed a lot of people before now. He even makes it seem like he prefer the way Kaori believes how the sword is used. He would prefer if life went that way. he speaks as if he's done this before, and that he's well, of course he's done this before. He's actually the Batosai. He speaks as if he speaks as a person who's killed a lot up to this point in his life.
He has that life-giving sword thing is actually a common thread in Japan. It's not just something for this anime, but it's an actual philosophy. There's two philosophies of using the sword, and Katsujin Ken is literally translated as life-giving sword, and it's talking about the righteous use of the sword, protecting the weak, destroying evil, and cultivating your own spirit. Whereas Sasujin Ken, apologize on my mauling of the pronunciation probably, is called the murdering sword, which takes the lives of the weak, propagates evil, and eventually destroys your own humanity. And so it's not something that was, it's not a philosophy like an ideal that was introduced to this anime. It's actually like an existing conflicting philosophies on how swords should be used. And it shows that that guy truly is a murderer, and that Kenshin has maybe fallen away from his beliefs. Maybe he's jaded, you know what I mean? Or like he's seen too much to feel that kind of idealism anymore about it. But it was interesting to me that it wasn't, with all the things that were made up for this anime, like the the terms and the type of sword that he's using and stuff like that. It was interesting that that was actually something that has like pretense in the
Well,
Japanese culture.
well, I mean, part of the reason why I wanted to review this with you is what you just did there. I've been well aware of the historical presence in this show for a long while now. I don't know much beyond what the little bit I do know from the little bit, from the original watch of this show that I did a long time ago. And I was, and the main reason I brought this up again is as a watch, because I haven't seen this show in a while, and two, I did not know it was going to get a reboot until like sometime last year, and I was kind of shocked that they're talking about redoing this show, and I got really excited because one, it'd be nice to show you this show, and then two, if they're gonna go through the entirety of the original idea, I would love to see it, fleshed out, and and I was like, okay, so the life-giving sword is an actual ideal in real life. That kind of is interesting because if I remember correctly, I know you like philosophy, and I know you like, like good. When I good versus evil, more like characters that kind of conflicted in a really weird way, like they've done something and they're trying to fight back the gain of humanity. I think this character might be not your favorite, 'cause I know how you feel about some characters. I think if I'm remembering correctly, you'll like what Kenshin himself goes through throughout the entirety of the dang show, and if I'm trying to remember correctly, but it's like a lot. I like this character a lot. He's not one of my top characters I think about a lot when I think about good, main characters, but I think Kenshin is a really interesting conflicted character. Because basically when he first introduced to Kenshin his entire episode, he kind of comes off as it comes off in his speech, and it comes off with the way he acts, where he doesn't seem like he knows what he's doing. Kind of just seems like a bumbling idiot for the most part. And then you even see him.
I think he wants people to think that he is, to hide his strength.
I mean, that's obviously what he's trying to do, but I'm just
giving him a lot of advantages so far. Like when he went up to that building and he was like going, "Hello, please, excuse me," over and over again, and acting like an annoying idiot. And they open the door and they're like, "What do you want?" And they're off balance, and he goes, "I'm here to see the master," and the guy says his name, and then he says, "Oh, so that is his name." And then the guy goes, "Wait a minute," because he underestimated him. So it's worked to his advantage quite a bit so far to act like a fool.
Yeah, I know, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but just saying that as like the way his character is designed and made, it's kind of funny. Because I remember seeing the show advertised, I think, a couple times in my life when I was, Tsunami was a thing, and I was in my Dragon Ball Z phase. I remember seeing this show and I remember not liking it. And I'm trying to pinpoint when I even actually started watching this show, because I remember never watching it and just judging it off what I saw commercial-wise. And it definitely wasn't in high school, so it must have been in college. But I actually sat down and enjoyed the show for what it was, and I think I really liked it. And maybe this is kind of like why I was able to enjoy Trigun to an extent, is like because maybe I had this exposure already towards a character that was like overly strong, but because of who he is as a character, he's not gonna like, unless you force his hand, he's probably not gonna show you his true strength.
Yeah.
And Kenshin is, I would say, the epitome kind of that within his show, where he's done quite a bit while also not killing anybody. And at this point, he hasn't killed anybody; he's just knocked them all out. He threatened
Really,
to
he
kill.
didn't kill any of those people.
No, he didn't. If you actually go back in the beginning of the show, when he is sword fighting with those people, you see blood. You don't see any of that here. He, in fact, is like, he's almost like, it's kind of like the Kendo sword. His sword is literally just, hitting them really hard. Everybody is knocked out.
But it was sharpened from the inside, which I didn't quite understand what that meant.
Yeah, I mean, I know what that means, but I'm not gonna say because they don't show it here, and it's kind of story important, so I'm not gonna tell you. Whatever you're thinking, it probably is what it is, but I'm just gonna, I mean, it's story important towards Kenshin himself.
Okay.
I'm not sure how you're gonna feel about it when they do reveal it. If they do reveal it, I hope they reveal it in this episode because I feel like they're gonna need to for the next few fights he's gonna get into.
Okay. I didn't fully understand it, so like, there's a lot of things about this episode that
I mean, but the thing is too, the
so
sword that he has does exist in real life too. So I mean, before, it's nothing. It's not like
they found one of them in 2014 that exists in real life, and it was from the Edo period, from 1603 to 1868. That's the only one they know of, and before that, it was thought to just be a made-up sword. It's not called a sakabato; it's called something else, but it was like basically functionally the same thing. And they also had knives that originally were considered functional as like a stabbing weapon and could be used for slashing.
Well, Ace Siri looked it up. I guess I'll just flat out say I'm not gonna say what it means towards Kenshin in general, but it's called a reverse blade. The blunt side is the side that he's hitting people with. The sharp side is the side that's on the side where the blunt side would be.
Right. That's what I thought it was meant, but I just thought that was like threw your opponent off guard.
But even with that whole idea in play that he's hitting somebody with a blunt sword, he is still knocking people out.
Right.
And he's doing it flawlessly. He doesn't really need to put that much effort into it. Even that big guy didn't seem like it took him all that much, time to knock him out.
Oh no, he just kind of jumped up and hit him on the head and one-shotted him.
Well, yeah, I mean that, but they also kind of say that he's kind of moving really fast. He's like using the speed of his sword and whatnot.
He's using Ultra Instinct.
Oh god.
He was using the speed of his sword, his posture, and his ability to predict his opponent's movements. He was using Ultra Instinct.
But this is kind of where my love for samurai kind of came from, but I also really aware that samurai are an old idea. So I still suspect that there are samurai that still exist. They're not needed anymore. So they got swords in their houses for no reason.
Well, the cool thing about samurai is like it was a way that you could move up from commoner to royalty if you wanted. Like it created a lot of upward mobility because anybody could try to become a samurai, and if you were successful as a samurai, then you could find success. So it was one of the routes you could take to get out of your class. You know what I mean? Like the caste system. And this might be judgmental or incorrect, but I think some people join the army as a way to move up in the world. Do you know what I mean? And find success no matter what their like state was before.
Well, you're not. No, you're not. That's not a judgmental. My father joined the Air Force to get a better opportunity because he grew up in he didn't grow up in the best financial situation with his parents. So like, and he said that he knew he was going to join the military so that way he could find a better employment. Plus, he's also black, so it probably helped him out in the long run to be in the military in the first place.
Yeah. So, not the exact same thing, but like that was maybe like sort of our like the United States equivalent of it. Like anybody could become a samurai without like upward mobility in the world.
If I can be real, I mean like the Japanese use samurai as their military. it's one of the few well-known things I think everybody would know is that the samurai were in fact the Japanese military at a time. That changed, and I'm guessing that changed when the Sword Abolishment Act came into play. So, but there was a time when the Japanese were in fact using samurai to fight their wars.
No, it didn't. Did you say the? What did you say came into play? The Sword Abolishment Act? No, the Sword Abolishment Act came after the samurai had already been kind of crushed.
Oh, so
And
that kind of came after the fact, after the samurai died out? Okay.
Yeah, it was in the 1860s that the samurai rebellion happened, and there were hundreds of samurai, and then they were finally like, their leader was finally like cut down with the last 40 of them, and a lot of others were captured or like dispersed. And then that's setting the tone for the historical period here, where he's like a masterless samurai, because the samurai as like a social class had been broken by now, and they're kind of like continuing to take away the rights that once existed for samurai and continue to encourage them to become obsolete. And there was even a law that like said that samurais couldn't cut their top knot, and they like even like did things like abolish that law, and like samurais didn't have to cut their top knots, but it was encouraged. And they did a lot of things like legally and culturally to try to undermine the samurai and kind of work the last little fading them out. And the Sword Abolishment Act was one of those things where the samurai, like for them, it was a big deal to have their sword with them. And originally, it was their like right, like it was a prestige thing that they could carry their sword with them. And then they said that they weren't allowed to bring swords anymore. So what a lot of samurai would do, there was an increase. I'm saying a lot of samurai would do, and I'm not sure about that, but that prohibition increased the number of non-sword weapons that were like they're starting to be used, or concealed weapons. So that's why Karu is her name. Karu.
I guess Karu. I will need to listen to her name more in the anime, but we'll go with that for time being.
Kaoru has a wooden sword, if you notice, that she fights with, even though her enemies have like another sword. And when he takes his sword out, he's like, "It's harmless. It doesn't have a sharp blade. See?" And he like shows him. And he's like, "And I can't kill anyone with it, right?" And she's like, "Yeah, I guess you're right." So there was a lot of like concealed weapons and things that were being improvised as weapons and stuff like that happened at that time, because the social and economic status of the samurai was being diminished, but they still had a need to carry a weapon of some sort with them.
I think we're all saying that the samurai were once an esteemed class, and now they're not. And unfortunately, not many, if any, exist anymore. I still suspect that they're still existing somewhere out there, but because they're not needed, you know.
It's still a theme in this. Like if you see the two dojos that you've seen in the show so far, one of them became like a den of thieves, right? And then the other one went from having 10 students to 0. And I know that like it was a hardship. Do you know what I mean? Like that was artificially brought down on it. But the story here is that this is two different examples of dojos falling apart because samurai are no longer fashionable and they're like becoming kind of scorned upon. And
well, I mean, in Kaoru's case, her dojo was just being their name was just being tarnished because the Batosai was claiming to use their sword style and his acts of killing people.
Exactly, but it wasn't doing great to begin with. It had 10 students to begin with. Do you see what I'm saying?
I think that
like,
she said the 10 students were pretty good for them, though. It didn't seem like she said like it didn't seem like to her that I guess they were doing bad.
She said it was a small school. Like she said, it was a smaller. It was enough to keep her going, but it was like a small school. And then the 10 were driven out, which meant that she didn't have anything. But what I'm talking about here is the undercurrent. Do you know what I mean? Like the themes that the authors of this anime are working with are all across the board, like showing all the different ways that samurai are kind of dying out here. And they're weaving the themes into the story and making original pieces in here. Like I said, that they call him a wanderer instead of a Ronin samurai and things like that. But it's the word that they use for it is almost like a downgrade, because like instead of being a samurai, like walking the world without a master, they're just calling him like sort of a hobo, you know. And that's why when she refers to him and she says, "You're just I need to look up this because it's becoming bad without ruining the word. The Rurouni, when she says you're just a Rurouni, she almost says it to him like you're just a bum. You know what I mean? You're just like a homeless person or something like that. And then she later comes back to apologize to him to say, I'm sorry I said that to you. Because she was meant it in a derogatory fashion, because like, but Rurouni was basically the equivalent of like a Ronin, and I think they might have picked this alternate word, made up word, because Ronin has too much nobility attached to it. Do you know what I mean? And at this time, like, there wasn't a lot of concept of nobility attached to a masterless samurai. They were just something that was fading out of existence.
No, I get that, and I definitely I know one theme that they're gonna probably stick with the entirety of the show is the pretty much the what Kenshin kind of harped on it near the end before he took out that entire army of people about him not being sure about a life-giving sword. Because again, the way he talked, and I guess there's another thing too to bring up, is the way Kenshin talks changes when he talks about swordsmanship. If you notice, like when he's talking in general to people, he kind of ends his sentences with "sort to say," or almost like he's not comfortable speaking the language he's speaking. But when he's like confident, he's talking, he's like trying to make a point. The sentences are more like direct and whatnot. You know, he's like speaking as if he knows he's speaking what he's speaking about.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even in oral, for instance, is like a just like goofy like you know, type of like, you know, it isn't like, or even like he's mentioned before when he went to go talk to those guys or deal with the problem they're having, he was like, hey, hey. He's acting like a bumbling idiot, when in reality he's not.
Right.
So his way of speaking also kind of like text that too, but he's like not, he's pretending to be this person who's not really comfortable speaking, or like, you know, he like his sentences. I noticed that they're doing that. I think I remember reading somewhere that that was actually on purpose. His way his speaking is actually on purpose. Um, it's like this
Yeah, it
really,
reminded me of Goku a little bit, where everybody assumes Goku's kind of a hillbilly because of the way he spoke in the anime.
if he spoke it a certain way, they didn't really make it obvious to the audience. I could buy it, considering he isn't like, he didn't really grow up knowing how to speak like a certain type of English or whatever he's speaking dialect. But it's just kind of interesting, the intention here is speaking in a certain way. But yeah, like I will say, like I like that, like from the onset, Kenshin doesn't look like he does much to him, but then as you start seeing him in action, and then at the end of the episode, he's just talking about like how swords are for killing, and that's all they're for. A naive little girl speaking of a sword giving life doesn't seem like it's real. I mean, that's not exactly what he said, but that's kind of what he said. Like, he didn't exactly believe swords are meant for anything else but killing people. Yet he's holding a sword that can't kill anybody because it doesn't seem to have a sharp edge. This is a sword that the side sword he's using. It doesn't have a sword. Does not have a sharp edge. And even to pull that point forward, when he was talking to the mastermind, he turned his sword the other way around, almost like a scythe, and was pointing it directly at the guy.
And then the guy gets kind of scared. Yeah.
Almost like, you know, almost like saying, "I will use this side if I have to." Type of direct threat.
And then he like, didn't he like pass
He just
out?
passes out. He just passes out, and then Kenshin just grabs. He just like everybody. Not specifically, but he kind of made the comment of like everybody shows who they really are. When, you know, people who talk this loud usually are, aren't that strong or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Again, touting that Kenshin is quite strong. He knows his limitations, and he knows the limitations of other people just by looking at him. Like, I mean, he clearly, based on the way Kenshin's speaking, he's done a lot. He doesn't look like he's all that old, but he seems like he's done a lot.
Right.
Which is interesting, in terms of who he is and the Batosai. I think, and I could be wrong, I thought I read somewhere a long time ago that the Batosai, or whatever that he was an actual job class in real life. and I think that was one of the first things to go. 'Cause I know there were government hired swords at some point back then.
I did of everything I did. I didn't think to look up Potosi.
I thought I read somewhere like it might have been called something else, but I think they existed at one point.
I didn't think to look it up. Sorry. Or I did, I think, and I think it actually I think I did look it up, and it said that it was made up. Yeah, if you type Potosi, fictional swordsman and wanderer Hirokima is also known as Potosi from the manga series Rurouni Kenshin.
When I look
inspired by Gensai.
Yeah, Kawai Kami Gensai was a Japanese samurai of the late Edo period. He was a highly skilled swordsman. He was one of the four most notable assassins of the Bakumatsu period.
But that's not a job. That's a historical character.
I think this is what the Batosai was actually based off of. So I'm guessing I was wrong about that being an actual job.
No, yeah, it's a historical figure that like he based it on. But if you read through the history of Kawakami Gensai, like they're not very similar yet. I mean, he was an assassin. He was only confirmed to have killed one person. Although it's did it in broad daylight, but he also did it in an ambush with 3 other people. So he doesn't seem very like. It's almost like they lifted like a little tiny bit of it, you know what I mean, and put it into him. But when I read through it, I didn't see a lot of similarities, all the way down to like they think he died because he drank too much, and that just didn't strike me as being anything like this character.
I mean, they say he like from the manga series, Rurouni Kenshin was inspired against. So the character is a repentant former assassin who was never sworn to kill 10 years after the major revolution.
Yeah, which is fine because he's not killing. But that's the fictional version. If you look at the real version, there's nothing here that says that the real world character like did anything like that.
I mean, his other work, I mean, they literally say he's a military official, sword trainer, and a former assassin. They literally call Gensai as an assassin.
They did, but they can't confirm he actually killed anyone except for that one person. And so it's assumed that he killed other people, but he wasn't like. It's not like a history of him being like a walking bloodbath or anything, like, or having like repented that and decided never to be it or anything. It looks more like he got a little too old for the work after a while and like retired.
But there was a samurai wandering around at some point with a reverse sword, so that always struck me as weird. I guess we can get off the topic of the anime and I guess that's something relevant. That always struck me as weird.
There wasn't really a samurai with a reverse sword. The reverse sword was like I said, they found one in a basement. Do you know what I mean?
But yeah, but that means somebody was walking around with it though. At one point, I mean,
that's assuming that it wasn't ornamental like the knives were. The knives that were built like that were ornamental, so the sword could have been an ornamental sword or a practice sword or something like that. But it doesn't necessarily mean that there was a samurai walking around with that as their main weapon. It just means that one of those swords existed once. It's very interesting that it existed for sure.
Apparently, the blunt side's heavier than the birds. What? This is news to me.
Well, there'd be more iron on the blunt side, wouldn't there? Or steel?
Yes, but I don't know. It just to me, it's like, huh? I guess that would make sense if they were to shave the side they want to cut with. I'm guessing that would make sense.
Yeah, it's not exactly streamlined.
But you can buy this sword on Amazon? I'm not gonna buy it. I'm just gonna. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I'm sure people have made some in the last 10 years because it's cool, you know.
I think a lot of this is probably for cosplay, so it's probably not a real blade. They probably couldn't get away with that. What the world? Medieval Depot reverse blade, Rurouni Kenshin katana, 1060 high carbon steel, $155. table display. Okay, that's what the got really concerned for a minute that they were actually making. So where's this coming from? Canada. Huh. I better get off of that before the government's tracking my every movement and sees I was looking at blades. um,
So in the opening, the character that decides to fight our main character, Sato Hajime,
mm-hmm.
Saito Hajime, he was a real historical character too, and he was he was a member of the Shinsengumi too. So that was kind of interesting, and he was supposed to be kind of a mysterious person, and he was unusually tall at 5 feet 11 inches, which I didn't think was that tall, but maybe in Asia,
You
like
gotta, but you gotta keep in mind, man. These are Asian folk, and typically Asians don't. And this might be ignorant of me to even say, but I mean, there's been historical precedent for this. Apparently, a lot of them didn't get really all that tall back then. Um, Apparently the tallest that they might have gotten would have maybe like 5'6", 5'7".
yeah,
Generally speaking, that's changed over the years because we have an Asian guy over here that's playing basketball. And he's like 6'7" or maybe 7 foot, who knows? But at a time, for whatever reason, they just weren't getting that tall. So that guy being unusually tall was probably unusual for the time.
yeah. And my mistake. That was the guy that, in real life, had heavy drinking when he was older and died from an ulcer that they think might have been related to drinking. Not the red-haired character. The red-haired character was beheaded for harboring people that were like harboring people illegally, like fugitives.
Ah.
Anyway, I thought that was interesting that he was like a high-ranking, like very well-known, like historical character as well, that was worked undercover with the police and things like that.
Yeah, the idea of a samurai is kind of interesting, even if the idea is kind of outdated.
Yeah,
Nearly ending as he's taking on the fake Batosai or the fake Tosai. Uh, uh, Kenshin mentions his sword style. You know, the Batosai uses a particular sword style, which I guess is interesting now I'm thinking about it because nobody knew who the Batosai looked like or what he was, who he was, how tall he was. I guess anybody could fake being him because nobody knows what he actually looks like, and they don't know what sword style he uses in the first place. That seems like it's important to know. Um, but it kind of makes me think that people who know the actual knowledge of who he is, like, will know immediately. Maybe based on if they're interacting with him and they give off a hint or something. Then maybe they know who Kenshin actually is. Here's another thing to point out too. You mentioned how you don't know like his name. This is the first time I'm seeing this, but it sounds like his name might have changed, like at some point in his life.
yeah. He says my name for now is blah blah blah. I noticed that in some of the historical characters I looked up, and I've lost track of which ones are which, did change their names over the course of their lives too.
But I say this is interesting to me because I don't think, and I could be wrong because I haven't seen the original show in a long time. So maybe this is always intentional with this character, as that his name wasn't always Kenshin. I don't remember this being a part of who he is, so it sounds like that maybe this might just be based on the way that the big tall dude who was like big muscular dude who was pretending to be a Batosai, the younger brother, he said him or a Batosai, so that makes me think that his name was Batosai, which is interesting to say the least. I didn't know that apparently. I thought that Batosai was a title of some sort. That's what I ran on, but based on everything I'm seeing now,
Yeah,
maybe somewhere in the course of the original show and this show, they fixed something that apparently was not right. So this might be a case of like maybe this. If this is the case, that some of the things were changed because again, we can't have a show back then in the 90s to go right.
Right.
Something's got to go wrong, and then we come back 10 years, 20 years later, 10 years later to fix it. It's like, okay, I mean, whatever. If this was something that was happened back then, okay, I am so sorry to the original creator that your show kind of got butchered that way, but glad you're getting it fixed now. I want to say that, like, this isn't the last time we'll see historical figures mentioned in the show.
Mhm.
There are several characters later on that are historical figures, are based off of historical figures. So when you see them, you'll probably get a kick out of it. But there's one guy I'm mentioning in particular, and I don't know his historical significance, but they really animate the heck out of him here, so it's gonna be interesting to see.
I'll be looking forward to it. I've been more interested in like the historical like time than the characters because like I said, it seemed like they were pulling names without really doing much about what that character was known for. You know what I mean? Like the historical characters that I've looked up so far don't seem very much like the character from the history that they were, except that they're like a name that
I
fits
mean,
it
I don't think
best.
that's really like. I mean, what I'm more aware of the show is that they take hints and stuff from history, and they just use it to their best ability because this is kind of fiction, but not fiction at the same time. Like
Historical fiction.
there's gonna be something. There's gonna be some things exaggerated for the need of the show, such
Yeah.
as Kenshin's movements. I'm pretty sure samurai are not that quick. So for the show, and also the Mitsing Guru. I forget. I will remember this by the end of the show. I know for a fact. But his swordsmanship is really awesome. We didn't get to see any of it here, but when I remember, I really do like the Lives attacks. But I do enjoy the way he talks. It's kind of interesting to see him talk, and I suspect that they'll keep on having him speaking that way for a certain amount of periods. I think. But Kenshin is an interesting character. The girl Kaori, or I will remember that girl's name at some point too.
Kyoru.
Kaoru is interesting.
Yeah.
Her. It's very rare that when they introduce female characters, they have like, I guess, compelling reasoning for who they are. Hers is probably the most interesting of any main female I've ever seen. Where she just wants to keep her father's dojo alive, and that's probably the most selfless I've ever seen to make female characters in anime. And I'm guessing this is just from the time period which this anime was from, but most of the time you see female characters that are main characters kind of like gold diggers. They're doing something for money. I mean, they're gold diggers for a reason, but you know, they're doing something for money. For the most part.
Moribito was a cool female character.
Well, she was the main character, not just a main female character.
Yeah.
There was a reason for her being who she was, but you know.
Well, she was the female character Moribito was the main character, but there were two characters with her. There were both the prince and the healer guy. Like, were both almost as big as she was.
No, I know. I'm just saying that for the most part, in recent times, the main female character is usually doing something for money for some certain reason, and I don't completely understand why this is becoming a constant thing. I mean, Uraraka was kind of like that at first, but then it completely diverged her off of that. She's probably still in it for the money, but you know, the real reason behind that want for money became relevant later. There's been a lot of times where female characters are doing something for money, and while that's funny at first, but it's like when they I'm thinking about a particular anime that they do this with one of the female characters, and it's kind of annoying after a while. I get it, you want money, dude. You have to see your eyes light up like dollar signs every time. But again, she has a reason for the way she is, and it's just like, Can we have a female character that's not into money for once?
That's pretty cool. I have not observed that in it for the money pattern that you have. So that's news to me.
It's kind of recent. So I mean, the show I'm thinking about is One Piece. I mean, Nami, she's the character I think about the most. But I started seeing new shows like when the female character, if they put her in there and they probably don't have a real use for her yet, they'll probably attach money on her
Yeah. I mean, I can't even think of a character that fits that description. The closest I can get to is Bulma, and Bulma started out rich, so
Really weird that Bulma, like, when the show started off with her,
it was
she
actually
wanted
really
the Dragon
generous.
Balls for a boyfriend. Now she's doing it for boob jobs.
But Bulma's actually pretty generous with her money. Like she doesn't really. I mean, not.
She's constantly making it.
Yeah.
But she is constantly making money, so it's like, I mean, you can't be that much of a gold digger when you are like, literally making the gold.
Exactly. So I don't know. And arguably, Chi Chi's more obsessed with money than Bulma is.
Yeah, I believe that.
But she needs it more.
She gets money, she just spends it fast.
Bulma?
Not
Chi Chi?
Bulma, Chi Chi. Several times she's
Chi
gotten
Chi?
money, like, it's disappeared within an episode.
Yeah, it doesn't work out. I don't know if I'd say she spends it fast. I can't think of anything Chi Chi ever spent money on except like.
She has to because the money disappears.
I think she spent probably on tutors and education for Gohan.
See here, two. At the end of the episode, after Kenshin, like, we know all the freaking place, but I mean, this has been a good podcast. The end of the episode, Kenshin bids his farewell to Kaori, and as he's about to leave, she asks for his name. Um, it gets quiet for a few seconds, and then he hear a sound that sounds like him closing the door, and he just pretty much comes out with it, saying that for right now, my name is Kenshin, and I will stay here for a little bit because wandering is getting tiring. I was like, no wonder. I'm like, no wonder Wander's getting tired, man. He's constantly walking around. So now he's a part of her dojo, I guess, to help bring the sword style back into the limelight. And that's where the episode ends. As
Yeah.
the first episode, this is really good.
I spent a lot of the episode just trying to figure out everybody's names. That was like one of my biggest things.
Yeah, well, get prepared. They're gonna add more names to the list.
Well, because of the confusion about the names, we had the guy that was like, we had people that had changed their names. We had like over the years, we had references to people's fathers. We had like, the guy that was like scamming everybody, like pretending to be somebody else. There was times when I didn't know the difference between like someone's job title and their names. You know what I mean? I spent a lot of time just trying to figure out everybody's names and like get that part down. And I still didn't. There was even at the end of this, I was like, still like 100%, not 100% clear on some of the names. I think I am now, but like the big guy, the giant guy that was like the main bully of this episode, like was he Gohai Haruma? Was he Haruma Basatsi? Was he the Basati?
I think it was
Basati job title? You know what I mean? Like Kamaya Kashin Ryu was apparently like the style, but like not like, you know what I mean? Like I was like very confused about his name because of what was going on. And before the podcast, when I told you, it reminded me of Trigon's episode 1 for a little bit. Like it's because like there was so much conversation and confusion about like what someone's name was in Trigon episode 1, with the main character being sort of a virtuoso that plays off as a fool. And in this episode, I felt like if I had just had a really good guy, like I almost wanted to Google it and just type characters' names so I could see a picture and all their names and make it done with it. But I wanted to experience the anime the way it was intended and not fall into a spoiler. So I didn't want to use Google for that. But like, it took me a while to figure out everybody's names.
I don't think with this show, I don't think, and I mean, you don't want to do this because you're not comfortable with doing it, and I understand that. I don't know if you would type their name and get a spoiler.
Maybe, maybe not. I didn't know that. You know what I mean? So I got one little spoiler just from what I researched on Wikipedia, even. Like Wikipedia gave me a spoiler or something. So yeah, it's dangerous. Like when I dive into this stuff and do research, like it's dangerous because like the whole series is released in one shot, and like everybody's just going to talk about it. And it's also got a huge past, like with the reboot, and also having like the precedent of the manga. So it's dangerous to do too much research without falling into something that's going to give up a lot of the story.
I get that.
Anyway,
Oh, I forgot
so wrap up.
about
I
that.
like this. This is one of the better series that you've introduced me to so far, and I'm enjoying it.
I mean, well, I thought in particular you would enjoy this one, just because I know you like doing research for things and knowing things and learning things, and I feel like this show, just because it does have, in fact, some historical precedent in Japan, in terms of like them taking things and making their own little spin on it. I think this might be interesting for you to do research in. And you say you've enjoyed learning about the period, so I mean, I suspect that there'll be more stuff like coming out from the time period in which the show is in, because apparently something else I was not aware of was apparently this show was during the transition of when the European, I don't want to say the European Union, but like European influence was coming into Japan, and I was not aware of that. I became really well aware of that when the intro played out and I saw a train in the intro. I was like, that's a freaking train. What is that doing in there? I'm like, oh, and then they even mentioned westernization in the anime too. In the first episode, like, oh, westernization. Forgot that happened. I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. So I'm guessing there's gonna be some small transitions in the show periodically of something happening, of something new being brought to Japan.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. It'll be really cool. And I'll get to keep learning about it as I go, so hopefully I'll be a little more qualified to speak on it. I feel like I'm out of my league a little bit speaking about it because it's a whole like super impactful historical era. The only defense I have is like I was somewhat aware of this historical era in the past, like anyway, because like watching classic movies like Seven Samurai, that black and white movie and stuff like that, like it's a common theme. Like the fading of the samurai is like a really common theme in Japanese fiction in general. So there was that as well. Like I had that
I
a
mean,
little
for
bit
me,
of
I've
background,
always,
but not dove into like some of the significance and commentary about it like I did to, like for this podcast.
no problem. I always had like a interest in samurai, just because, of course, cool guy wielding a sword. Who doesn't want to see that? So, like, I mean, this show was like itching me in the spot I need to be itched.
Yeah.
And I personally, when I remember of this character, I remember, and I'm trying to remember if it was either me reading it or watching. I forgot what. It's happened such a long time ago. I completely forgot even how I viewed this thing. But I remember really liking a lot of the confrontations, and from what I remember, I think the confrontations get even cooler as we get further in. And plus, him, Kenshin as a character, we get more. We get to learn way more about him. I feel like as a character that we get to explore, that's already kind of done it all. I think, in my opinion, maybe Kenshin's probably the coolest in my opinion. Because sometimes like seeing a character grow is cool, but sometimes seeing a character that's already grown to a point and seeing their past is even cooler.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll be watching episode 2 and seeing what's going on there. I did not look at the title. I'm gonna keep that secret. I suspect that there's a character that I'm expecting to show up. I don't. Oh, they're doing that character next? Okay, never mind then. That's not the character I was thinking of. What?
Tokyo Samurai Yahiko Myojin.
I know who that is, and I'm surprised that he's in episode 2. But we'll talk about that later.
That sounds good. Something to look forward to.
I mean, don't. Okay, I'm not gonna say anymore. I have opinions on him when he first starts out, but then my opinions change as the show goes on. But yeah, it is what it is. I will go into that when we get into it. I did not know he was next, so that means I know who's coming up next after that. Then okay, that's cool. I guess with that, we're gonna end the podcast here. Thank you for showing up.